kind of grew up being aware that feelings were not meant to be felt. My world had become really small. I think there was a real lack of love in my life. I didn't love myself. I'd stopped connecting in a way that was meaningful, having that compelling need to drink. Well, I understood that it wasn't normal. I understood that it wasn't good for me. And I understood that I couldn't seem to stop on my own. But I drank very specifically to deal with grief, to deal with loss, to deal with, the pain and the loneliness. Why have these horrible physical things happened to me? And I didn't seem to have any way of processing that grief or coming to terms with those losses in a healthy manner. I was devoid of any sort of way of healing. I couldn't see how I could heal, and I knew there must be a different way. Once I started to learn to help myself, then I was able to let others help me. It kind of, you start to sort of blossom.
My name is Nicole Young, and this is the Rock Your Bottom podcast. Janey Morris, welcome to the Rock Your Bottom podcast, babe.
Thank you. So good to be here.
It's so good to have you here. I just want to say, you have been along this journey with me since the start, and I want to thank you for that, and thank you for coming down and sitting down with me today. It means so much to me. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really excited and really relaxed, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh my God, thank you, my friend. So I love to start these episodes off with you just highlighting a little bit about who you are and where you come from. The floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. Who I am and where I come from. Well, I'm Janey Morris, and I was born here in Auckland, New Zealand, and my people really are from the Highlands in Scotland and the East End of London. So, on my father's side from the Highlands and my mother's side from the East End of London. And I'm a first-generation New Zealander and feel very much like an esteemed guest here in New Zealand. I do, because this is not where my parents are from. So, when I'm in Scotland, when I'm in England, that's where I feel connected to. And I love Aotearoa. I love being a New Zealander, but I feel very close to and connected to that clan mentality that the Scots have. And I was thinking about it when I was driving over here. I was thinking, feeling very Scottish and feeling connected to a clan. I kind of recreate that in my work environment. Whatever job I have, because, like I work privately, so I work on my own now. But historically, when I've worked in teams, I've always sort of recreated the clan mentality and felt really tight and close to the people I work with. So, I think that's where that comes from.
Incredible. That's very special to be able to have that in a work environment as well.
Yeah. I think it's really important. I've worked a lot in teams, and there's nothing worse than a dysfunctional team, so, as we know, and we've all been in them, I imagine. But, when you have that team mentality and everybody's doing what they're meant to do, I think that's what makes the work environment so much sweeter. Yeah.
Talking about you and your journey, I love to also bring to the table for you to just acknowledge what your substance of choice was and how clean and sober you are today.
My substance of choice was alcohol, and I've been clean and sober. We don't say that anymore though, do we? For 28 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
What does that mean? How old were you then when you got sober?
If you don't mind. Well, I was 80. No, I started trying to stop drinking when I was about 30.
Okay.
Yeah. and I didn't make it to treatment till I was 33.
Okay.
So by the time I was 32, 33, I was, starting to acknowledge that I couldn't seem to stop. I would go out and I'd think to myself, right, just don't have a drink. Just go out and have a nice time. And I couldn't seem to do that. And it started to really bug me. I'd just think, or just have one. I could never do that. And I started to, ask around and say, I think I need to go somewhere. I'm just not happy with my life. There's something wrong with me. I can't go out, have a nice time with some friends and not get drunk. And I tried and I tried and I tried, and I was just so powerless. And it felt it just felt really out of control. And I remember I was working at the Prostitutes Collective up on K Road.
Wow.
And one of the women there said, why don't you go to Higher Ground? And I just thought, God, that sounds beautiful. That sounds like, what a polite. I was like, what do you mean go to Higher Ground? And she said, it's a treatment centre.
Oh my God.
In St George's Bay Road in Parnell. And I said, yeah, but I'm not a drug addict. I'm I drink. Yeah. And she said, oh, it doesn't matter. They don't care. You should go there. And I was like, okay. And around that time, I found a meditation tape. It's a tape. It was that long ago. A meditation tape, and it was on step 11, which talked about sort through prayer and meditation. And I played that tape and I thought, oh my God, I'm addicted to alcohol. I'm an addict. I am an addict. And I think then I had a really clear idea that the addiction, I understood having that compelling need to drink. Well, I understood that it wasn't normal. I understood that it wasn't good for me. And I understood that I couldn't seem to stop on my own. So when that person said go to Higher Ground, it felt like a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
It was like, because it sounded beautiful, Higher Ground. And before I went there, I imagined that I would wake up in the morning and they'd bring me an orange juice, and then I'd go and hop in the spa and then I'd have a massage. No, seriously, that's what I thought rehab was going to be like. So I got there, and I think my first job was like cleaning the toilets or something. It was a real letdown. And but it was nice to be in a safe place, and it was nice to be around other people that were also trying to stop drinking or doing drugs.
When you entered treatment and then you left, have you picked up a drink or a drug since?
No.
Wow.
No, I've 28 years continuous recovery from all substances, which is, just, it's really sobering, and it's really humbling.
Yeah.
And I don't really take it for granted. And I think treatment was such a wake-up call to the way I related to the world and myself and the people around me. My world had become really small and really self-centered and self-oriented, and I think there was a real lack of love in my life. I didn't love myself. I didn't really connect. I'd stopped connecting in a way that was meaningful. And I was very present to that. And I could feel that in my body and soul that was missing. And, going to treatment was no picnic, that's for sure. But I started to thaw out, and I started to connect with my feelings again, which I felt had, alcohol had buried them. And I started to feel love again and connection. And that was like, oh, and when they talked about, I didn't really understand the concept of a spiritual awakening. But in hindsight, when I look back, I think, they, starting to feel love, starting to feel connected, they were my spiritual awakenings. And I felt like I was starting to be part of. And I really comprehended that recovery was a spiritual movement. Recovery is a movement of men and women who are trying to live a different life to the life that they had been living. And it doesn't matter what that life was. What mattered was we were all on the same walker, sort of paddling. Yeah, so... yeah.
That's pretty special, eh? Really beautiful how you did step into treatment and you got that connection back, and you were able to grab onto that and continue that.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to get an understanding of what your life was like when you were a little bit younger and where your addiction started for you.
I think... when I was really young, I didn't realise it then, but my mother had started taking benzos when I was about 2 or 3. And I think that I felt that I had 2 mums. I had this mum who was really loving and really kind and gave me everything and felt like, she was the most caring mum. And then I had this other mum who was really shut off and disconnected from me. And I can't remember when I started feeling present to those 2 mums, but it must have been when I was very young, very, very little, And, my mother was from the East End of London, so she talked like that. She was like, hello. And, she, my dad left when I was very young, which is why my mother started taking benzos to squash those feelings of grief and shame a lot. And, this was in the 60s. Nobody got divorced. And, so my mum started taking benzos. I was present to that, kind of grew up being aware that feelings were not meant to be felt. There were things you didn't talk about. And there was this sort of underlying tension in the house. And then when I got to about 12, my mother started to have these really bizarre parties.
Tell me about one.
Well, we had a bar. We had a nice house. We had this big bar in the house with this big Galliano bottle. And in those days, alcohol was quite cheap. So when you had a party, you catered for everything. You put you put the food on. There was the bath got filled up with ice, and and my mum would get really dressed up, and she would dress me up as well. And there was dancing and drinking, and so I always related alcohol with having a jolly nice time, because nobody became violent, nobody was nasty, nobody fell over. It was a very contained, fun occasion. And I was 12 and I thought it was bloody marvellous. And my mother would be making Harvey Warbangers and I would be allowed a shandy, so it was, really I went through my teens, going out and having fun and drinking, and it wasn't really a problem. And then when I got to my early 20s, I had this really adventurous spirit and I decided that I was going to go and travel through Indonesia and Asia and go overland and end up in the UK. And I got really sick in Indonesia and had to be flown home, and I got typhoid fever.
What was that experience like?
Well, it was hideous.
Yeah.
It was awful, and it interrupted my plans.
Yeah.
And it was like the first... in hindsight, when I look back, it was incredibly traumatizing. And I didn't really know how to process that. And because I was traveling and having a fabulous time.
Yeah.
Smoking weed, magic mushroom, just the whole shebang, just having a jolly nice time. And, all of a sudden I got this infectious disease and got flown back home, and my family were, freaked out. I was freaked out. And it really knocked me around. And I think that's when I started to drink to manage that trauma, That was when I had something happen to me that was way out of my control, and the only way I seemed to be able to deal with it was to drink. And then in the next 5 years, I had 3 counts of invasive surgery that I was hospitalised for. And again, I think I couldn't really deal with the pain of having abdominal surgery and been, blood transfusion and being rushed to hospital. And, I couldn't, so I was starting to really develop health anxiety.
Did those surgeries stem from the disease that you got overseas? They were something different?
Yeah, they were from ectopic pregnancies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I was in a lovely relationship with a really nice guy, found out I was pregnant, and then boom, my body let me down. And that happened when I was about 23, and then it happened again when I was about 26, and then it happened again when I was about 28. And they really, again, it was a health trauma, and I suddenly, after getting typhoid fever, having 3 ectopic pregnancies, being told that I couldn't have children, I think that really sort of knocked me for a 6. And again, I think alcohol for me was me self-medicating. I couldn't deal with the fact that I was 27 and I couldn't have children, and that I'd had this infectious disease that had taken me probably about a year to get over. So again, alcohol was a way of masking feelings of trauma. And then I got hepatitis C.
Oh, wow. Let's put that one in there too.
Oh, I know. So I got hepatitis C from the blood transfusion that I received when I had that first ectopic pregnancy.
Oh, my God.
So my 20s were really riddled with health issues, and the alcoholism that came in was to deal with those overwhelming feelings of, oh my God, what's happening to my body? This isn't normal, Yeah, so, that was, that I think, it feels like, because I didn't drink for very long, and I also didn't drink very much, but I drank very specifically to deal with grief, to deal with loss, to deal with, the pain and the loneliness of not being able to have children, which is something that I just think I took that for granted, like most women do. You don't think that you're not able to have children. So I think, that was huge.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that my drinking after that, after those like 5 health issues, my drinking became, it took on a different flavour.
What was that different flavour? What did that start to look like?
Well, it started to look like, like I said, I was a binge drinker.
Yeah.
I didn't drink every day. I drank, for the effect, and I drank to, numb that pain, and it started to look like being really unpredictable. It was very, very hard for me to be reliable. And like I said, once I started, it was really hard for me to stop. Although it didn't take a lot for me to become inebriated. So it was this, I don't think I stood out as being a problem drinker, and I started to drink at home And I think that's what made the difference too. What started off to be a very social way of drinking, I related drinking to fun, having a good time. That changed, and it started to be, I was relying on it more and more.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I was just reflecting back to what you said about when your mum was hosting these parties when you guys were younger, and it was all about having fun, and then you had all of these sort of traumatic experiences happen, but you started drinking for the opposite, sort of things like grief and sadness. And do you think that you learnt that just from within, like you sort of knew that alcohol made you feel better in that moment, so you just sort of
I think when you said, what's your drug of choice, I thought, I don't know if I actually chose. I think I just took what was available at the time and ran with it, and it worked. So I don't know if it was ever a choice, really.
Did intervention start happening in place? Did people start clocking on to your drinking?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going out with this really nice guy, and I remember, drinking, and my behaviour just became outrageous. My boundaries, I would just say really inappropriate things.
Give me an example.
No. Take my top off. It was like, oh my God. And I remember going out with this guy, and I remember the expression on his face, when we were dancing, because I get really nutty. And I remember, like, the next time, he came back for more. And he must have been a sucker for punishment. And he goes, you're a bit nuts, but you're kind of fun. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, it's like taking a mad dog for a walk. And I was like, I don't know if I should take that as a compliment or what. But I mean, there was still that idea. I mean, I think, having fun was still first and foremost. And I did, but I just took it to the next level. Yeah. I didn't know when to stop. And, it used to feel like I'd be sober and then all of a sudden I'd be drunk, and there was sort of no in between. Yeah. And I'd hear people talking about the flavours of wine, it was a nice fruity bouquet. I didn't know what that meant. Nah. I had no clue. No. Were you the same?
I didn't know what that sort of stuff meant, because it's like, it's wine.
It's irrelevant.
Wine.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it wet? Has it got alcohol in it?
Yeah. How much percentage is it?
Have you got a bigger glass than that? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, it became a problem, quite swiftly.
Yeah. What other sort of consequences did you sort of end up facing with your drinking?
Not many.
Wow.
To be honest, not many. I never got arrested. Considering some of the situations I put myself in, I came through that fairly unscathed. There weren't many consequences, if any. I'd been working in the hospitality industry, which I loved. If you're an alcoholic, working in hospo is like a dream come true, because you're just waiting for the end of the night. So in that respect, it felt like more of a spiritual consequence for me personally. It felt more like a spiritual stripping of self-love and hope. And it was like the little things in life became irrelevant. So I lost sweet moments and friendships. The ability to sustain a loving, committed relationship was beyond me. So I think it was more this, the spiritual breaking down and the, just the meaninglessness. I felt really meaningless. It was like, why am I here? I'm here drinking, why? And I knew there must be a different way. And when that woman said to me, go to higher ground, I really latched onto that because I felt like I spiritually needed to be taken to a higher ground.
Oh, wow. And so that lady just came up to you and was just like...
Well, no, I think she was a friend of the coordinators because I remember it was during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there during the day and I can't remember what for. So this woman was a friend of the coordinators, yeah.
Wow.
So it just came out of the blue.
Would you call that like a little bit of a turning point for you, that pivotal moment?
Yeah.
Yeah. And looking back, what would you identify as your sort of rock bottom moment if you did have one?
Yeah, I, like I said, that spiritual void that I was present to for, years. And also I still remember my last drink really, really vividly. I think I was at Crowbar and I remember I couldn't walk and I like to look nice.
Yeah.
And I didn't look nice that night. I was, crawling on my hands and knees and I don't know how, but I got into the back of a cab and excuse me. I got into the back of a cab.
Yeah.
And then threw up in my handbag. Oh no, it's not the highlight of my life, but yeah, I threw up in my handbag. And then I went to the bathroom in the back of a cab and then I can't really remember much.
Did you have to pay a fine?
I can't remember. I have no recollection of how I got out of the cab and into, it was just a big blur.
Yeah.
And that was, that wasn't good.
No.
When you can't walk and when you can't, get yourself to a proper toilet, I just felt really humiliated and sick.
Yeah.
I think those hangovers really, started to be
Take their
unmanageable.
toll.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't look good. My skin was dry. It was the meaninglessness. I mean, I didn't go to jail. I wasn't bankrupt, but I was unable to sustain any sort of relationship. And I think in a way that's kind of worse. And I just felt constantly hopeless. Just that, that sense of loss and bewilderment of just kind of looking around and going, I just don't get it. Why am I here? What's my purpose? And the only time that would leave me was when I would drink. And also, why have these horrible physical things happened to me? Because I was in my early 30s and, I was diagnosed with Hep C at I think 27 or 28. So it wasn't that long ago. And I didn't seem to have any way of processing that grief or coming to terms with those losses in a healthy manner. That was completely, I was devoid of any sort of way of healing. I couldn't see how I could heal. Yeah.
Do you think back then there was probably not a lot of education around going and seeing, I guess, professionals about this sort of stuff as well?
Yeah, and I don't know if I would have gone anyway. I mean, you have to be willing.
Yeah.
And I think because I stopped trusting myself and my ability to help myself, that all changed when I decided to go to higher ground. But I think, once I started to learn to help myself, then I was able to let others help me. It kind of, you start to sort of blossom, and that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
But prior to that, it felt like I was really closed up.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, I couldn't tolerate feeling vulnerable, whereas I think it feels like the cleaner I've got, the more vulnerable I am. and the more sensitive I've become. But I think that's my natural, it's more like my natural way of being is gets unleashed when you stop, for me anyway, and it increases year by year.
That's incredible way that the human condition just keeps evolving the way that it does.
Well, yeah, and I think, now that I'm a drug and alcohol counsellor, myself, and I've trained in that, in that field, it's amazing to really, sort of feels like I've, been able to transcend the limitations of being an alcoholic. I got to transcend that through the opportunities that came my way purely through being, clean and sober. Yeah. Because, I don't know, the opportunities are there. Whereas I think when you're drinking, you just don't see them. I think they're there, but you just don't grab onto them.
You're blind to them.
Yeah.
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 So 28 years ago, you made the decision to sort of listen to that woman that approached you, and you entered higher ground. Talk me through what that was like the process. Is it still quite similar today? What was it like for you? What was your experience?
Well, I was expecting a spa. I was expecting a health spa, and that's not what it was. And I think, that my sense of entitlement became really apparent in treatment. And, those defensive mechanisms that I'd used over the years were looked at and explored a bit more. It wasn't as difficult then as it is now. I had trouble with my words then. I think it's a bit more strict now. I remember lying on my bed sometimes in treatment. I don't think that happens anymore.
Lucky.
Yeah, I know. And I remember having a few little temper tantrums and, so it was very different back then. I mean, it was 1996.
Yeah.
We didn't have cell phones. It was completely different. It was in St George's Bay Road in Parnell. I mean, it's now in Te Aotearoa. It's a different organisation, but it's still fundamentally the same. It is a 12-step abstinence-based treatment facility. So, and it will always have a special place in my heart because of that. And I worked there for 5 years, which I loved and, learned a lot. So it's definitely somewhere, I recommend it to clients if they want to go to treatment, although most of the clients that I see don't want to go to treatment. That's why they've come to see me, so that's quite interesting. But I don't think treatment's for everybody. I really don't. But for me, it was the perfect place. I got a sense of community, and and I also got taken to NA meetings. Like, even though alcohol's my drug of choice, I got taken to NA meetings because that's just what, so I did, I've done the bulk of my recovery in Narcotics Anonymous meetings, and really, I was lucky. I enjoyed meetings. I liked going to them, and I made friends. I made other sober friends and went to conventions and, yeah.
Did you, I forgot to ask you earlier, did you have any siblings? It was just you?
Yeah, only child.
And so when you entered treatment, did you get support from Mum? Was she still,
Oh, yeah, I remember ringing Mum and going, Mum, she was like, what? And I was like, I'm going to treatment. She went, oh, thank God.
Jesus.
I know.
Oh, my God.
She was delighted. And a lot of my friends were like, really? Have you got a drinking problem?
Yeah.
They just, yeah. So she was ecstatic. My aunt flew over from Australia. The whole family was overjoyed.
So you got a lot of support from family.
Got a lot of support.
That's incredible.
Yeah, got a lot of support. And, my mother and I had been quite, I don't know, it was a difficult relationship. That all changed. And it became a really lovely relationship. I don't think there's anything more profound than having a good, solid relationship with maybe not both parents. I mean, both parents would be great, but for me, certainly having that close relationship with my mother definitely sustained and nourished me. And she was just my staunchest supporter. And I remember when I was studying, she was like, "Oh my God, you're studying to be an alcoholic." Oh my God. And she got all clucky and funny about it. It was gorgeous. You know, she was just really happy for me.
Yeah.
And really glad to see me in better shape.
Incredible. Going back to your time in Higher Ground, what do you think, you learnt most while you were in there?
How to be around other people, really. Because a lot, even though I was out socially drinking, I also drank alone. So I'd kind of lost touch in how to communicate with people, how to resolve conflict, how to just sort of be around other people. And that's what it taught me. And that's one of the things I really loved. And I know it's one of the things that stops people from going to treatment is they don't want to be around a lot of people. They don't want somebody else cooking their dinner. They don't want to do chores. They don't want to spend 4.5 months in an institution. But I think for me, it got to the point where what were the options? What were the options? It was what I was presented with, and I just kind of, yeah. So for me, it was perfect, but it's not that perfect for everybody.
Yeah.
And especially now because there are other places to go and there are other options. But, yeah.
Interesting. While you were in there, was there sort of like the same sort of amount of people in there that there is now?
No, it was a lot less because it was in St George's Bay Road, which is a big, old, beautiful house.
Yeah.
It was much, much smaller than the facility they've got now. So I'm not sure how many High Ground holds now, but I'm sure it's more than 20. I mean, I was in treatment with about 20 people.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a lot, but it's still, And, I mean, Odyssey have got, their adult program. I think that, again, a lot of people in one space. And, again, I don't know if that's good or bad. It just is, and it's what's on offer. But I think if you want to stop drinking, you will stop. Once you've made, and I think for me, I had made that decision. I had decided that I'd had enough. So I don't think it mattered where I went. And if I hear, a lot of the clients that I see today have been to Higher Ground or have been to Odyssey or have been somewhere and they say it didn't work for me. And I question that because it's not about that working for you. It's about you working at that. These are free services that are on offer. You don't have to pay for these services. They're free. I think that's fantastic. And, if you can't get clean or sober in a facility, then, sure, try one-on-one counselling. But, there are a lot of people that don't go anywhere. And they get well because they choose to. So I think we have to take we have to take all the responsibility. And I think if I stopped with that amount of health trauma and that, then anyone can, really,
Just got to come from within. Is that tricky to tell people, like to try and get across to people today for you as a counsellor? Like, how you just said you've got people that come to you that have been and done these programs and it didn't work for me, and you just sort of spoke about it coming, as an individual. Is that tricky to get across to people?
Well, I don't really try. I tend to not say that, because I think one of the things that I've learned being in private practice is when to be quiet. When, the biggest part of my job is listening. And because I have the experience that I have, other people, the people I see, have to be honoured in the experience that they're having. So, and I do believe that that treatment isn't for everybody, and some people do feel, that it wasn't the right fit, and that's okay, but it's still, it's not an excuse to carry on, because it's a pretty good intervention, and the people that, the practitioners, the clinicians that work at Odyssey, that work at Higher Ground are good people, and they know what they're doing, and, they're great programs. So I tend to focus on, well, if treatment, hasn't worked for you, what do you think would work for you? How do you think, we could move forward in a way that supports you not wanting to go back to treatment, but also maybe remembering some of the things that you did learn and applying them to your life. So sort of, I think the more hands-off that I've become as a counsellor, the more people will kind of step forward and into their own recovery process and their own way of developing. So, it's amazing to watch, especially if I'm treating people that are in, because a lot of the clients that I get now are not only struggling with alcohol and drug addiction, but they're also struggling with psychiatric drug dependence as well, which is really complex, plus all the other issues that go with living in 2025.
Yeah.
So, I'm always in awe of people who come and say they want to stop using, and they're taking this medication and they're looking at losing their house, or they've just lost their job, but they're still in their hearts, they're determined to stop using. I'm in awe of those people, and I see them regularly, and I just think, wow, that is some dedication.
Yeah.
That they've decided that regardless of their circumstance at the moment, which isn't perfect, I mean, some people come and they're like, I think, how are they affording to pay for this? Or, that's none of my business. But the motivation is profound. For whatever reason, they can't go to treatment, and sometimes it's financial. They actually can't financially afford to be off work for that period of time, but they want to get clean, and I just think, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps inspiring me about the recovery movement.
Yeah.
Is that over the years it's changed, but people fundamentally want to not use drugs and alcohol. They know that it's killing them in some way. Yeah.
It is interesting. You brought up a really specific topic before about the psychiatric drug stuff that you see some clients on, and we will come back to that. However, at this moment, I'd love to ask you about your process about transitioning back into the community after treatment, and what that whole experience was like for you and how you navigated that.
Oh, yeah, that's an awesome question. I just kept going to meetings and listening and making friends and going out for coffee, and I just immersed myself in the program. I was like a little Girl Scout. I would trot off to meetings left, right and centre, and driving places was no big deal. Gas was cheap. It used to cost $30 to fill up my car with gas back then.
Yeah.
It was just nuts. Yeah, so I did the suggested things. Mostly.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Just that. I mostly did the suggested things.
Janey, reflecting back on what you said a little bit earlier in regards to your mum and her benzodiazepine use, I was wondering about what that process was like for you and how that in itself affected you as an individual.
Well, I think what it did was I knew she had a very close relationship with her top drawer. And I didn't realise, I found out a bit later that her benzos were in that top drawer, and that she would take them every day. So, and there were another lot of pills in there that she used to take as well, which was her contraceptive.
Yeah.
Because I remember asking her once, I was like, "What are you taking?" And she was like, "Well, I'm on the pill so I don't have another baby." And what about that one? She goes, "Oh, that's just something I need to take every day." And taking pills was just kind of normal, and although alcohol's my drug of choice, I also took pills, and they become part of my using, I suppose. Even though I didn't really consider them drugs.
Yeah.
They were pills.
Yeah.
That I got from the doctor.
Yeah.
And everybody was taking diet pills, so I didn't think anything of it. And then as I during my 20s, I started to, take some psychiatric medication, but I never took them regularly. I would take them haphazardly, but I did take them. And then when I got into recovery, I had a really bad bout of depression, and I can't remember when it was, and I had taken some psychiatric medication for a while, and then I came off. And then a few years later, I had something else happen, and I went back on, and then I came off.
Yeah.
And so I've often, in my recovery, I've come off and on psychiatric medication without really giving it much thought. I've gone to the doctor and I've said, "Look, this and this and this has happened. I'm really struggling to go to sleep," yada, yada, or, whatever it was. And not realizing that psychiatric medication are a really potent drug. I think because they're called medication, it sort of lulls us into thinking that they're not really serious drugs or they're not really effective drugs, but they are.
Yeah. So when you call them a potent drug, what do you mean by that? Like, what are these drugs actually doing to individuals?
Well, I think it's not so much I'll describe it like this. If you go along to the doctor and say to the doctor, "Look, I've been feeling a bit low lately. I've had a relationship breakup," or whatever it is. And the doctor said, "Oh, okay, it sounds like you're a bit depressed. How are you sleeping?" "Oh, not that well." "Okay." And then you get a prescription for an antidepressant, and you go away and you take that antidepressant as prescribed. There seems to be no recall around when you stop taking that antidepressant. It's given out quite haphazardly, it seems to me. And whenever I have been prescribed a psychiatric medication in the past, I've not been told to come back in 6 months' time or come back in a year's time. There seems to be no kind of follow-up. So what I've done is I've just stopped taking them. Until I did it on one particular occasion, it was like the gates of hell opened up. I started to get really bad mental health symptoms that I didn't realise were actually withdrawal symptoms from the psychiatric medication.
What were these symptoms?
High anxiety, not being able to sit still, very jumpy, pain in my legs, like down the side of my legs, like my nerves, which are classic withdrawal symptoms. So I think for me it's about acknowledging that if we're going to be prescribed these medications, they come with a bit more consent, telling people what these drugs the potency, because it feels like we're in the culture of being prescribed these drugs but not being deprescribed them.
Yeah.
Which is really concerning.
Wow. And so where am I going to take this? It's just you've just opened up like a massive door. I've never spoken to anyone except for you about this topic before. And I think you personally, having your own lived experience with it, and also you now work as a drug and alcohol counsellor as well. So you have experience with assisting people with this whole process. What does your life look like? What did that process for you look like, getting off of those drugs and navigating your way around coming off of psychiatric drugs? Did you go and face your own GP? How did that happen?
Well, what happened was I learned through basically a Facebook page called Benzo Warriors Community. I learned about slow tapering, that if you are going to come off if you choose to come off a psychiatric medication, at least go slowly, and then that way your body doesn't feel the withdrawal effects so intensely, you hope. Because these drugs are so random, they're not individualized, and everybody responds to medication differently. So what might be a very easy taper for me might not be for you, because we're all so different. And I did go to my doctor, and I took along the Maudsley Deprescribing Guidelines, which is basically a text which, has all the antidepressants, all the the antidepressants, the benzodiazepines, the gabapentinoids, and it shows you about receptor occupancy in the brain, and it looks at what rate of taper you should follow. It's an incredible book, and I took the Maudsley along to show my doctor, because I said to her, look, you know how I've come to you on and off over the years, and you've prescribed me psychiatric meds, and then I've just kind of randomly come off them. And she was like, yeah. and I said, well, I've had a really bumpy time with some of these medications, and what I believe has happened is it hasn't been my mental health at all. It's been withdrawal symptoms from taking these psychiatric medications that's impacted on me, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, on all levels. And I believe now that coming off these medications slowly is a lot more beneficial, not just for me, but for everyone. You guys aren't doing that. And I showed her the Maudsley, and she was amazed. She was like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And I've said, because, you've prescribed these medications, but not once have you recalled me to see how I'm going. Not once have you recommended coming off these medications. I've done that off my own bat, and I've done it in the safest possible way. And she went, wow, so you don't think it's been your mental health? And I said, no, I think it's been withdrawal that I've felt that mimic, if you look at withdrawal and you look at mental health symptoms such as high anxiety or depression, they're pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And she went, so you feel as though that you've been in withdrawal from the medication that I've prescribed you, and it's not been your mental health at all? And I was like, yes. And she went, and she said, Janey, I'm going to tell you something. And I was like, yeah. And she said, a few years ago I had really bad nerve pain, and so I started taking gabapentin. And she said, I took gabapentin for about a year, and I came off it, and I fell into the most hideous depression that I've ever experienced in my life. She said, well, do you think that's withdrawal? I said, that was withdrawal. That was not your mental health. That was withdrawal from you coming off that gabapentin too quickly. And she went, so she was totally supportive. And I almost wept with joy and relief that she believed me. Yeah. B, she was willing to look at the Deprescribing Guidelines, the Maudsley, and C, that she shared her experience. And the reason I bring it up and the reason I'm so passionate about it is because my mother was addicted to benzos, and she came off, and her personality changed, and she became a much better version of herself. And I believe that taking any sort of psychiatric medication, your brain adapts to that medication, and I don't think it brings out the best in us. And I think what's happening, especially in the recovery world, is that a lot of people that are in recovery do go on psychiatric medication, and then they come off it too quickly and they start to get all these horrendous symptoms, and they relapse to deal with those horrendous symptoms. So I'm not judging people that take psychiatric medication at all. If you're taking psychiatric medication and it's working for you, then good luck. Good on you. It's fine. But if you want to come off these medications, I offer coaching. That's what I do, because a lot of the clients that I'm seeing now, and I've been seeing them in the last couple of years, they're coming to me not only with issues with drug and alcohol addiction, but they also want to get off the Zopiclone that they're taking every night, and the citalopram that they're taking every morning. And so what do? Well, that needs to be triaged.
Yeah.
And it needs to be looked at. And because the brain is a very, very delicate organ.
Yeah.
And, I think also too, people have gone to their doctor and they're told that they've got a chemical imbalance. That's impossible. Nobody has a chemical imbalance. It's rubbish. What sort of chemical imbalance? These are good questions to ask your doctor.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not anti-doctors, I'm not anti-psychiatrists, but I am, very active in supporting informed consent and a lot more transparency around how we've researched these drugs. They haven't been researched very well.
Yeah, it's funny, I've never ever, just like you said, heard of a GP or doctor recall a patient back, 6 months' time after they start taking an antidepressant or something to then start tapering them off. It's just not heard of.
Well, it's not part of our culture yet.
No.
And that's, I'm really passionate about that, because I've had my own issues with benzos and because my mother's had issues with benzos, and I think my grandmother did.
Yeah.
So these drugs have been around for over 50 years.
For someone listening to this and tuning in, psychiatric drug, what is in the hand of a psychiatric drug? What does if you could name a couple for people to sort of understand that it is just quite regular medication that you can get from the GP. Because, for example, when I think about, when I didn't know what a psychiatric drug was, the word psychiatric is quite a big word and it could mean anything to anyone listening. What is a psychiatric drug?
A psychiatric drug is an antidepressant, an antipsychotic, a benzodiazepine, a Z drug. I would class gabapentinoids as even though they're pain medication, they're still very difficult to come off of. So they're psychiatric drugs.
Oh, wow. And you speaking before about how you love to sort of promote education around this. I know that recently you have been working on something pretty big in that space. Do you want to share with me and my listeners, what that has looked like for you?
My YouTube channel.
Yeah, and what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when I was, withdrawing from psychiatric medication, I noticed that there wasn't many. I love guided meditations. I really do. I love me a guided meditation. And there weren't many. And I just found listening to guided meditations so soothing. And, I was feeling so jangled. And so what I've done is I've created a YouTube channel and I create guided meditations for people who are withdrawing from psychiatric drugs or who are in protracted withdrawal. So, I've just posted my first one. It's called Cloud Breathing.
Oh, my God.
And they're breath-assisted meditations. And they're quite immersive because I do a bit of a slideshow with them as well. So, because there's people that have akathisia, which is a movement disorder, and that often comes about when people have tapered off a psychiatric medication too quickly. They can't sit still. And so I've created it so that you don't have to be lying down with your eyes closed to listen to my meditations. You can be watching the screen or walking around if you need to. So I wanted it to appeal to people that are in all stages and are experiencing all different types. And it's basically a soothing, affirming, because the experience of withdrawing from a psychiatric medication is quite isolating because it's still very much an anomaly. And, I've had some interesting conversations about it with like, what are you talking about? Antidepressants are fine. And it's like, they are fine for some people, but what about people that want to come off them?
Yeah.
Let's look at safe taper strategies to support that so that we can mitigate those really, really full-on withdrawal symptoms that people get that absolutely decimate their lives. So, yeah, I'm just about raising awareness and supporting people.
I just think it is incredible that you've stepped into this. You've recognised that there's something that's sort of missing out there, and there is a massive space for this for people that are struggling out there, because I can guarantee you that a lot of people have probably listened to this and a light bulb's turned on for them.
Oh, wow,
and
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. And, in the States, they're at a different phase in the States. In the States, there's a black box warning on psychiatric meds, on antidepressants, because they are so widely dispersed and people don't really comprehend the efficacy of them. They are potent drugs. And I think it's as a mental health consumer, I don't know where my head was at, thinking that I could take this, antidepressant every day and somehow my brain wouldn't adapt to it. I mean, it does to everything else. So I think it is about education. And again, I think it's also about culture. Somewhere along the line, we decided that taking a pill every day to help us is normal, and I don't think it is. And I don't know what the alternative is, and I understand why it's happened. Again, I have no blame or no, this is coming from a place of, wanting to help people, not, blaming or shaming anybody. And like I said, if you're happy taking your psychiatric medication, then keep taking it, that's fine. But if you do want to come off it, look at doing it really, really slowly. And most of the time, doctors are recommending that you cut it in half for 2 weeks and then you cut it in half again for 2 weeks. And that's too fast for most people. But for some people, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So you really don't know. But, I think, in the States, there are a lot more coaches. There's the Benzo Information Coalition, there's the Inner Compass Initiative. So there's a lot more organisations that are looking at this issue. We're still very much in the formative stages here in New Zealand. So, I just want to be part of that.
Totally. And so do you believe that a lot of your mental health issues that you have faced over the years have been from coming off of psychiatric drugs?
I think so.
Yeah.
But I don't know 100%. I think that's, I remember when I worked in a dual diagnosis service, and a lot of the clients would say, well, how do I know what's my mental health and what's my addiction? I thought, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
That is a really good question. How do you know?
How would you answer that today?
Well, I would probably triage it and look at behaviours, and start from there. But I think it's, we don't know. The brain is still uncharted territory, and I think, again, it's really interesting that our brains are probably the least looked at organ than the rest of our bodies. And we have specialists for different parts of the brain, but I think there's still a lot to learn and a lot to explore.
Talking about the brain and the education and stuff around it, And, you know, we sit here in a place today where we have both suffered from the disease of addiction. Do you believe that addiction is a disease, or do you believe that it stems from somewhere else? What is your point of view on that?
You know, I don't know. I really don't know if it's a disease, and I really don't know. But in all the people that I've worked with over the years, I can't find one common denominator. You know, some people have adverse childhood trauma. Some people have great childhoods. Some people, I just don't know. It's definitely something. It's a something.
It's a something.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a disease. I'm not sure. But I think it helps people identify. But I don't know if it's healthy to identify with having a disease. I don't know. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I have clients ask me, well, do you think it's a disease? And I always say, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something.
There's something going on that's,
Yeah.
It's interesting, It's, I think as the world keeps evolving as well and more research and stuff comes out, it's going to be like, oh my God.
Yeah, and I think it's really liberating to be able to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because, I think we also live in a culture where we've got to have the answer and we've got to have it all figured out, and we've got to have, and I think with psychiatry and I think with psychiatric drugs, there's still a lot we just don't know. And same with addiction, there's a lot we don't know, and what works for one person doesn't work for somebody else. But I do believe, I think I got a lot of healing from having a very good sponsor. I think for me personally, I found that a very healing experience.
That's awesome you say that, because my next question to you was actually going to be about, what tools and strategies did you pick up within your journey to be able to make it to 28 years, like clean and sober, because that's a significant amount of time and something that, it's rare to have, it's incredible, really.
That's incredible.
It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
How have you been able to do it?
Alcohol is not going to make my life better. Why would I want to mess myself up anymore? Life is hard enough without throwing a substance, be it a legal substance or an illegal substance, in it. It's not going to, it's not going to enhance my life. It's not going to help. Yeah, that day at a time, that one day at a time has really served me. And it's just not part of my lifestyle. I choose not to. It holds no appeal to me whatsoever. And I don't like being around drunk people. And I don't like being around people that are fried. So why would I want any part of that? I like the little things in life. Like this, doing something like this, being part of this. To me, this is significant. This is worthy of my time. This is worthy. I couldn't be in this if I wasn't sober, and just appreciating the little things. Yeah. I don't want to poison myself.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I think a lot of people don't really put two and two together that alcohol is a poison.
Yeah.
That's
true.
It is true.
But some of the food we eat is poison.
Exactly.
And it's like sugar. I mean, sugar just, honestly, I had some sugar yesterday.
Jesus.
No, not yesterday, the day before.
Oh my God, what sugar did you have?
I had a bit of carrot cake.
Was it good?
So good. But I tend to not have it because I just spin off.
What does spinning off look like for you?
I start being really silly around the house, and I start annoying my husband. He's like, oh no, you've had some sugar.
Oh no.
Oh, stop.
Yeah. Oh, it is good though, just having a little sweet treat.
It was a really sweet treat. There's nothing little about it. I mean, I figure as long as I don't eat anything bigger than my own head, I'm doing well. Yeah.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting as, like I said earlier, you know, further on down the track as more research comes out about all of this. Because sugar's another drug, you know, like but it is in everything, nearly everything we consume, you know.
Well, it's not in fresh vegetables.
No, that's why I said nearly everything.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
no, you're safe. You're having veggies for dinner.
I don't know what I'm having for dinner. We had kebabs last night for dinner. It was delicious.
Yum.
Yeah, I think anything that you can't say no to is an addiction.
Yeah.
You know, anything that's kind of outside, you know, anything that you don't have any sort of control over, there's addiction in there.
Yeah. Looking and reflecting on your journey, I'd love for you to name, you know, what the greatest gift you've received over these last 28 years have been for you since you got sober.
Just self-acceptance, and getting married. I know that might sound weird, but I never, you know, I think I always wanted to get married and have a family. And I think having that family aspect being taken from me, you know, and dashed, I kind of gave up on being a married person. I didn't think that would happen for me. And I really wanted that. And I really enjoy, you know, sharing my life with someone else. And I enjoy, you know, appreciating the little things in life and feeling like, you know, I have a relationship with myself now.
Yeah.
And because I have a relationship with myself, means I can have a relationship with you. And, yeah, I can deal with anything. I don't have to have a drink or a drug to deal with it. I don't need to take a pill. I can just, you know, be in a place of pain without wanting to numb it.
It's a real special thing, I think, being able to sit there and just be with yourself as one.
Yeah.
And that just be what it will be.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. Within that, you know, I'm well aware that doesn't happen overnight for people as well when they step into recovery. You face some challenges within finding yourself and navigating that. Did you end up facing any challenges within your journey?
Oh, which one?
Like when you stepped into recovery, you know, just in general, like a generalized question, have you faced any challenges?
Yeah, I think the transition from using drugs or drinking to not doing that is enormous. It's the flip side. So I think, you know, managing anxiety, depression, all those things in a holistic way is something that you learn, you know. And talking to people in early recovery, I'll be like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I can't talk. And people will say, well, just take a deep breath, or, you know, have you thought about meditation? Or have you prayed? You know, so starting to get those little, not tricks, but little coping skills. You know, learning to sit with yourself, that was huge for me.
Yeah.
Learning to just sit with my uncomfortable feelings and not do anything to change it or minimize it, or, you know, and to just be open to life. I think I really, you know, enjoy that. Like I feel in a way, you know, I've got a website up, you know, I'm promoting my private practice. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm making, you know, writing and recording guided meditations for people. You know, I feel really creative and satisfied, and that's not a feeling I thought I would ever experience. You know, that sort of expansion and being willing to come here and do this. You know, being willing to meet new people, being willing to to be myself. You know, I remember my sponsor saying to me once, "Oh, you're such an isolator," and I thought, yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like, you know, some things haven't changed for me. I am still an isolator and probably always will be. But I can accept that, and I know when I need to get out. You know, I know when I'm being too isolative. So yeah, it's about taking on feedback, but not necessarily adhering to it just because somebody said it to me. Just having my own inner compass, so that I can, you know, be my own guiding light and be a light for other people as well. Yeah.
That's beautiful. As we sit here and you brought up the topic of your website and stuff, I'd love to give you that space to just let people know what your website is called, how they can find you, what you do within that.
Oh, okay. Well, it's janeymorriscounselling.nz, and I offer 3 different services. Drug and alcohol counselling, you know, I will always be a drug and alcohol counsellor, so that's one service. And then I offer mental health coaching, that's another service. And then I offer counselling for family and friends. So that's 3 different services. And it's it's been such an experience putting together a website.
Yeah.
You know, because I thought I could build one myself. But there's a lot to it. But, you know, and that it's the first time I've been able to showcase my work. And, you know, my meditations will be going on there. And, you know, I intend to write some blogs, and I want it to be a place where people can see what services I offer, where they can book, you know, and just have an experience of what I've got to offer.
Incredible.
Yeah. Have you checked it out?
I have.
What do you think?
I think it's pretty spanking good. I think you've chosen the perfect colour as well. Like it's
all about the colour.
Well, you know, like I felt safe in
good.
it. That's I clicked and I was like, this is a bit of me.
Nice. Nice.
It's attracting, you know.
Yes.
It's I think websites these days, it's hard to find originality within them. Personally, you know, like it's like, oh, another website, but yours, I was like, that is also, because I know you personally, I was like, that's you as well.
Nice.
And I thought that, I just felt quite proud. Like I was like, that's so cool. Like I'm so proud of her.
Thank you. That's really good feedback, because I worked with Mark Stevens from Paragon Design.
Yep.
And it's got the patience of a saint. You know, it really is a big thing.
It's massive.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, I've looked at some pretty amazing websites, but I wanted a website where people felt warmth and they felt safe and they felt cared about in the website, just going through and looking at the different services and you know, reading a little bit about me and about what I do. And I wanted, you know, it's not about clickbait so much as it's about creating a safe space, because if you can do that on a website, then you can do that in the counselling area. So I really wanted to translate that. So yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, well done. While we were talking as well, I was just reflecting on what I thought you were going to say when I asked this question. You know, if we had someone out there listening to this episode and they were struggling within the mental health and addiction space, what would your advice to them be if they were looking at, you know, getting some help, but they didn't know what to do? You know, like I feel like a lot of people out there don't know what the first step should be or what that should look like. What would you recommend to people?
Most people have an idea about what sort of help they want. You know, people tend to know whether they're going to go to treatment or whether they're going to have one-to-one counselling or whether they're going to white knuckle it and not, so I think people do have an idea about where they can go.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, is that not what your experience has been?
I think in my experience, I didn't know what the hell was going on half the time.
Yeah, well, I think, to be fair, usually I offer 1 hour and a half hour session, and I offer a 15-minute free meet and greet, so people can just book 15 minutes. I'll meet them, say hi.
Yeah, they
can figure out whether they like the look of me, the feel of me, and then if they want to book a session, they can. If they don't, that's fine as well. It's okay. Yeah. It's absolutely okay. And a lot of the clients that I see don't know whether they're going to go to, they don't know where they're going to go. They don't know what they're going to do.
Okay.
And so, usually in that first hour I do an assessment, which takes about half an hour. And then, I can suggest to them, I can give them the options that are available to them, like detox. Do you want to go to detox? Do you want to go private? Do you want to go to a funded rehabilitation service? Do you want to go to something during I can get an idea. And like I said, most of my clients don't actually want to do any of those things. They want to get well, coming to counselling once a week or once a fortnight or twice a week to start with. But I have had a couple of people that have said they're going to go to treatment. I don't know whether they have or not, but I've talked to them quite a lot about higher ground, and a couple of people I've talked to quite a lot about the service in Royal Oak for Odyssey. And, because I've been in the industry for so long and worked in a few treatment centres, got a pretty good idea about what's going on, and just left them to make up their own minds.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I've also had some people that have, and it's great, that they've decided to just come to counselling, and, I've kind of been their coach there, and we've done the relapse prevention, sort of been their treatment, which has been really rewarding.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and other people come for, a few sessions, and so long-term, short-term.
Yeah.
People come back, go away, come back again.
A bit of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Within our space here in New Zealand as well, what do you believe we need more of within our community and with our society to see a better outcome in people that are suffering from mental health and addiction?
Well, God, where do I start? I think providing funding for people to attend counselling is something we really need, because I know that work and income do contribute to counselling sessions, because I've signed quite a few forms for people, but I think they only pay for half, which can make it financially really, really difficult for a lot of people. So I think, alcohol and drug counsellors could be funded. I think that would help immeasurably. And I think a couple of more residential facilities wouldn't go amiss, I think. But I also think people are really struggling to take that time out to go to treatment because of the economy. It's really difficult. People are struggling, and so I don't really know the answer to that. But I think, more funding.
You've answered that really well. You're the first person to acknowledge that work and income will pay for half of a, counselling session, but not the other half. I didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually really interesting to hear that, and it makes me sad that it's not, the whole session.
Yeah, you'd think it would be the whole session, but it's not.
Yeah.
They pay for half, which I think is fantastic. And, that I do offer half-hour sessions, and the reason that I offer those half-hour sessions is to help support people that can't afford a full-hour session. It's like, I have to, be mindful of people's financial situation, and I am.
Yeah, and just accommodate to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much pro bono work you can do.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, Janey, I just want to just as we wrap this session up, I just want to acknowledge you as an individual and just say thank you so much for coming and taking some time to sit down with me and the listeners on the Rock Your Bottom podcast to share a bit of your journey. It's been phenomenal hearing, stuff that I didn't know about you, stuff that I did, and just the way that you embrace your journey these days, and you're just full foot forward, man. Like, it's so cool. I admire you. And I really, really love to give my guests the space at the end to wrap up with whatever they want to wrap up with. Before that, though, I would love for you to share your favorite quote or saying that I did ask you to bring prior, but I actually forgot to ask earlier about it. But yeah, what's your favorite quote or saying that you brought with you today that has helped you within your recovery?
Keep it simple.
Yep.
I love that. Just keep it simple.
What does it mean to you to keep it simple today?
I didn't plan on you asking me that. I'd only bought the quote. Keep it simple. I apply that to all situations. I break things down and keep it to its sort of most simplistic, most straightforward, what's going to work for me and you. And I keep it in that place.
Yep.
Yeah. Not making things worse.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, it's not bad, eh?
I think it's pretty good.
Does it rock your bottom?
Keep it simple. It does. I bet you it rocks yours sometimes as well.
My bottom is rocked.
Oh, thank you, my friend. The space is yours to wrap up on whatever you want to close on today. And thank you again.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been really lovely. And I talked about things that I haven't talked about for a long time. So I really want to acknowledge your capabilities as an interviewer. Yeah, really enjoyable. And I think what I want to wrap up with is that, we are stronger together. And I still do the odd meeting. And I think that, there is nothing that can happen to anybody that, drugs or alcohol will fix. There is an alternative. And I think, for most people, having the courage to reach out for support, I think that's a real lifeline to stay in recovery and to not relapse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
My pleasure. Keep it simple.
Yep.
I love that. Just keep it simple.